many people who attempted fighting Nasingbe found themselves in the bad side of the law. When FOR came to power, those who attempted the same thing, you see people publicly beaten. The same ECOWAS community will come and do condemnation, and then you realize that everything come back to normal, and he's still there. Nobody is able to take him out. But the fact still remains that what is so heinous has to do with the constitutional amendment that was done. The rights of citizens to vote is a right that cannot be taken away from anybody. The right of citizens to express their viewpoint in terms of what they actually want is not anything that any person can take away from them. Even where communist state, citizens still have their right to express their views. And most people don't know, especially in China, for example, they have that pyramid form of governance. And the same is practiced in the United States of America. Aside where we have, let me use US, where we have this public voting, where everybody can vote. The system where people with the highest kind of representation, for example, they still have greater number of decisions to make in terms of voting. And so if you look at China, look at United States of America, still people still have their right to vote. So China, sometimes they will say, well, they're a communist state, but you look at their voting pattern, they come from the down to the pyramid. But Togo, just behind here, behind Ghana, just say, and it's sickening. And that's what it is forgotten, because you see, even have president, they just talk about it and that ends it. Some of them don't even want to incur the wrath of France. And so for me, what is important is that, or what is seen as an eyesore has to do with the constitutional amendment. And permit me, if you even read what happened, how do you someone will go and think and dream about that? That you will want to have what we call the PCM, Council of Ministers, President of Council of Ministers. You form this kind of body. You think that the parliamentarians should rather vote and choose who becomes that, the president of that. No, it doesn't make sense. And you see, even in 2019, if you read the amended constitution, 2019, it didn't even have a cap of term limit. So you get the privilege to become the president as he has. He'll be there till he dies, like what happened to his father. And then, not only ECOWAS, I think that there are certain times we have big guys who should talk about it. Countries who think that democracy is good for all of us must be seen to be moderating some of these things. Because ECOWAS becomes a toothless bulldog. They don't do anything. AU is sitting quietly somewhere. And then today you are issuing a statement that they should speak about dialogue. What is dialogue about that? And so for me, Togo is like nobody cares. The gentleman walks about freely. He suppresses the rights of people freely. He does everything freely. And so even when you are very good, and I met colleagues, friends who were Togolese and they were outside the country, were together out of the country. When you mention, oh, I'm going back to Ghana, the person said, why will I want to do in Togo? What is there for me? And it is not that he's engendering any development agenda in that country. If you go to Togo, just pick it, you take a bicycle, the whole of Togo, you run around and you are done. The roads are not good, infrastructure is very poor, people don't even have basic things to consume. And so for my challenge is that, what on earth are leaders of Africa doing? Because if you listen to, you remember AGWA, the African peer review mechanism. Those were times that they could moderate each other. Okay, please, I think this, that, and that are not doing well. Now, all the presidents just go there, they sit down, they talk about things, and they come back home. And they keep suppressing people. And so for me, it is high time, United States of America, it is high time all other international bodies think that. This is not just a home matter. Because if you are going to do this, assuming somebody gets up, take the arms, become a coup leader, and leading his people, like what happened in our neighboring countries. And they went and said, well, they want to go and intervene. What is happening at Togo? So, my brief comment is that most of the inhumane practices that are done there, African leaders seem not to care. And then, they will not be able to suppress this thing that has been done to people because they have unduly eaten eating with them, dine with them, and they think that it's all right. Because you cannot do this. And as I'm telling you, he's also having children. If they allow this to be consistent, he will die on the throne. His children will also grow up to die on the throne. And at the end of the day, what are we practicing? So my advice will be that one, Ghanaian government must also add our voice by not putting by not saying that we are the bona fide people preaching democracy, but even as part of this diplomatic relationship, Ghana, because when there is trouble over there, they all run to Ghana. So the government of Ghana should also urge the Togolese people with caution how they deal with people, and they kill people. Look at how they fight. When you watch the video, sometimes you'll be amazed. What happened? Why are human beings like because of power? And so the Ghanaian government can also talk about it. As for ECOWAS, you see that people don't even talk about ECOWAS these days, because their manifest function has actually eroded. It is just the latent function they do, and people normally say, well, no, look at how do you issue a letter like this? And so for me, I think that it is high time African leaders begin to think beyond that, and they know that power is transient.
Thank you very much. Let me say a good morning to Hamza Suhini of the National Democratic Congress. He's been speaking so much lately about the judiciary. I've seen his stories on Ghana Web and on other platforms as well. Hamza, good morning. It's been a while. I hope you're fine.
Good morning, Doc. Good morning to the senior counsel himself. I'm sure you'll be going for the... Are you going for the regional law week? Law week. They say if you don't attend, you can't renew your license. So have you heard that? That's what they're doing. So,
right, Council.
Yes, sir.
Council, let's hear from you, Togo.
Yeah, so let me mention that it's been a while. Wish my proud brother here good morning. Suhini, good morning. Suhini, I think we were, Hamza Suhini, we were on CTFM on Saturday where he gave a very powerful submission. I told him there, and hopefully today he will bless us with another one.
These days I'm saying that you're on fire.
So I think the issue on Togo is evidence of the vestiges of solid colonial past. You can see the hands of the colonial masters and everything happening there, and sadly you see clear evidence of how principle has been lost in our politics, because the colonial West have been preaching democracy, and clearly from what is happening in Togo and their loud silence, it's clear that they only preach democracy when it suits them. They speak about the philosophy of freedom when it inures to their larger agenda, and at the heart of this is an agenda to dominate the black man. Now, you see, you cannot discuss this issue, this Togo issue, without going back into history. I think we all know that Togo gained their independence on the 27th of April 1960. That independence struggle effort was led largely by Sylvanus Olympio, who formed a party predicated on three principles. The principles being on one, economic self-reliance, two, on a non-alignment, because you recall that in the 60s when a number of African countries had their independence, the Cold War was at its apex. The Cold War between the West, led by the US, and then the East, led by the Soviet Union. And so he predicated his party's principles, and certainly the position of Togo, one on non-alignment, and three, a focus to reduce the influence of French or France on Togo. Sylvanus Olympio became president on the 27th of April 1961. In less than 2 years, Nyasime Ejadema, who was a military man, part of the French army, led a coup d'etat that overthrew Sylvanus Olympio. In fact, he was killed in front of the US embassy. Now, Olympio, Nyasime Ejadema did a coup d'etat, but then they elected, or they placed Nicholas Gronitzky as the president in 63. Then 67, in fact, that coup d'etat was the first coup d'etat in sub-Saharan Africa. And then in 67, he did another coup and cleared Gonetsky and then made himself president. He ruled for 38 years. He ruled on fear, on patronage, and on political divisiveness. Now, I think sometime in 2005 he passed. Then when he passed, the military, which were largely from his people, the Cabre people in northern Togo, placed his son on the throne, and he has seen the throne here, against all the abiding principles of governance that the West taught us. I'm saying the West taught us because you know that this our government system, this our democracy, which was falsely preached, and the philosophical basis stated clearly in the preamble to the U.S. Constitution, and understanding that this our democracy, our constitutional democracy that the West preached, was predicated on the philosophical concept of social contract, and that one of the abiding principles of the social contract is a principle that says that those that govern must do same by the consent of those they govern. And you recall the writings of Thomas Hobbes in the Levantine, where he gave the foundation for why governments were formed in the first place, to say that man in this natural state, and man, when you say man, all of us, we are all independent, we are all sovereign, we have the right to rule ourselves. But in that state, where we are all sovereign and there is no central government, then it becomes a case of the strongest will survive. So that if you bless, fine boy bless, you use your fineness to go and get some girl, and I think that I like the girl, because I'm stronger than you, I'll kill you and take the girl from you. Or use your toil to build your house or establish a business, and I think I'm stronger than you, I'll kill you and take your property. Or I can even force you into slavery. And so Thomas Hobbes in the Levantine made that profound statement and said that man in the state of life, or man in his natural state, is short, is brutish. And so because of that, man needed to enter into a contract with central government, where we see the bit of our sovereignty into the hands of that government, so that that person will protect our right to life, our right to our liberties, and our right to pursue our own happiness. So essentially what is happening in Togo is a clear and fundamental departure or breach of this social contract that ought to exist between the governed and government, and that this sort of monarchy that is existing in Togo, this family rule, flies against everything that the West preached to us and for which we accepted, and thus undermines the purpose for which the philosophers and for which we all agreed and for which lives were lost. I say lives were lost because historians tell us that the biggest benefit of the two world wars was to guarantee and secure for us the principles of democracy. You understand? And so our brothers in Togo right now, because of what is happening, because of the lack of fidelity to the principles of constitutional democracy, are being governed without their consent, and thus undermining their inalienable rights to life, their inalienable rights to their liberties, their inalienable rights to pursue their own happiness. And the biggest issue for me is the influence of France. Because why are the West quiet? They've waged wars, they've effected regime changes on the premise that those regimes were unconstitutional, that those regimes were fighting against the rights of their people. And yet, what is happening in Togo, you find the silence of France very loudly. And the question is, are they truly faithful to these principles that they advance to us and practically and sometimes force on nations at the pain of death, at the pain of breaching all the principles that govern international law? Because I hope you I think for me that's the bigger issue. But then, in the light of all these philosophers that the West have preached to us, I want to quote one of their philosophers, St. Augustine. He said that an unjust law is no law at all. Because what Eyadema seeks to do is to use law to secure himself in government in perpetuity. He has amended the constitution, and the effect of that is that really, but in what a lot of people consider to be a sham of a democracy, because prior to this they were voting, and at least that kept the people a bit quiet, because then they felt that they consented to Fourier Yadima ruling them. As whether that consent itself can be avoided, because there's also a huge view that those elections were largely rigged. But to the extent that you create a constitution that says that it's parliament that is going to elect you, and you've given a background or you've given a proper context to this whole amendment issue, and he has the courage to create a law that essentially is saying that I do not need the consent of those I'm going to govern them. That law is unjust, in the words of St. Augustine, and because of that, it's no law at all. And St. Augustine added that where there's an unjust law, which is no law at all, then the people have an obligation, have a duty to resist that law. And so, people of Togo who elsewhere were saying are docile have shown that they have that innate ability to rise up and resist the oppressor. And no matter how docile they may be, they have that power to resist the oppressor. Because we forget that these same Togolese fought against the might of France and secured for themselves independence. No matter the terms of those independence, whether it was truly independent, but at least they resisted to an extent French rule. You understand? And they are going to resist this attempt to deepen the oppression by the Eyadema family. Who knows? Maybe this is the time where they are going to free themselves from the shackles. Who knows? Maybe the time is now when they are going to set themselves free. Who knows? Maybe this is a time where the whole of Sub-Saharan Africa must question the role the colonial masters continue to play in the politics here. We don't want a situation where there'll be a repetition of the Rwanda story. Because the Rwanda issue was also similar, where they play on our tribal issues to perpetuate the oppression of the black man. Because what has been their modus? Essentially in Togo, and I think my brother will give a very nice, give an explanation. At the heart of it is the West don't mind playing on our tribal divisions, you understand, to perpetuate or to sustain their influence in a part of the world. Because after all, countries are artificial creations. We deliberately create countries. Indeed, even tribes are creations. When God created the world, He didn't create tribes. So essentially, all of us are one people. All of us. And under no circumstance should we allow man-created, I don't want to use the word divisions, identities. I don't want to use the word division, because it's essentially identities. Man-created identities Because it was not, God didn't create those. God created one human race. One human race. Even the color shouldn't even divide us, because we are all human beings. You understand? So it is important that we, the Africans ourselves, we find a way of building that unity that is required to make true the purpose for which we even created our countries in the first place. Because you take Ghana, prior to 1957, or even prior to 1901, or prior to when we had this colonial thing, Ghana was made up of, or this territory called Ghana was made up of different countries, quote unquote. But we decided that we were going to come together and form one country. And because of that, we need to deliberately create a system where the country we all agreed to create will be elevated, and our tribal considerations will become secondary. Because once we create a situation where the tribal considerations are heightened, then the oppressor, the West, can use that to weaken us so that they can perpetrate their oppression and their dominance of us. So for me, I'm going to make two calls here. The one, in the light, or to re-echo the words of St. Augustine, that constitutional amendment that Pharaoh Eyadema has made in this country is no law at all, because that law is an unjust law. And the people of Togo have an obligation. I would say obligation is their job, is their duty, to resist with all their might this unjust law and the repercussions of sin. And two, and I know that they are going to succeed. And when they have succeeded, that they deliberately as a people take steps, policies deliberately to whittle down on their tribal considerations. To whittle down on their tribal considerations. You understand? So that they can forge that one strong Togo, where the interest of that creation, that country they've created, will supersede all other interests. And when they've done that, then it will be very difficult for anybody outside to penetrate and create the divisions that will make it easier for them to oppress them. And I think Ghana, we should take a cue from this. I think we are too complacent. We are too complacent. We seem to have a fairly stable democracy. But the biggest enemy to this our democracy is our tribal divisions. And the fact that the politicians have always played on that to divide us so that they can rule us. Because let me reiterate this point, that when it comes to the tribal identity, it's the creation of man. If you read history, before 1701, there was no tribe called Asante. Now, if you extend it further, you reach a point where there was no tribe called Ghana, there was no tribe called Dagomba, there was no tribe called... We are all one people. God created just one race. God created one race. And when God created us, he created us into social beings. Because the purpose behind our creation was for us to collaborate, to create a situation where all of our individual ambitions can best find a place in that collaboration. You understand? So we should take a cue from what is happening in Togo and other African countries, that for Ghana to fulfill the object, the purpose, the reason for which all of us decided and agreed that let's create this artificial entity called Ghana, that we need to play down on our tribal considerations, and we need to deliberately create a system where the country, that entity that we've created called Ghana, will be heightened. And then when we do that, then when we are taking decisions, we will reduce the instances of competing interests. That will create a situation where in everything that we do, the overriding reason, the overriding principle, the overriding interest will be the interest of Ghana. And when we've done that, when we've whittled down on our tribal considerations, when we've whittled down on the fuel, the fire that can push that parochial agenda, then we'll stand the best chance of Ghana once again reclaiming its position as the Black Star of Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hamza, how has Togo responded to the current civil resistance? What is the current situation? Well, I know a thing or two about press freedom. I know currently it's being suppressed. The freedom of assembly, of course, to some extent, I would say that is still being suppressed. But the Togolese people appear to be adamant, and they want to see the back of foreign assembly as we speak. Your thoughts?
Good morning to our cherished viewers out there. Bless. I think that Doug and Senior Counsellor Pierre Dankwa, they have done justice to the issue already. And for me, what is exciting is the background that Pierre Dankwa has given in terms of, even to a very large extent, the expected relationship that should exist among African countries beyond the borders that were created, especially coming at the back of the fact that we just got done with a National Prayer Day for a Thanksgiving, right, yesterday, in honor of our first Republican state, or if you like, democracy, that was ushered in after the likes of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, with the help of many of our founding fathers and common traders teamed up to ensure that for the first time Ghana became a republic after it attaining independence in 1957. So it is important in discussing this matter for us to situate it within our own development as a country called Ghana, especially if you are familiar with the Nkrumah dream, because that dream was bigger than the entity called Ghana. It encompassed, to a very large extent, the African continent as a whole and our ability to unite politically and economically, to become active players, not observers, as far as global political dynamics are concerned. Unfortunately, after almost 70 years or 60 years, we are still struggling as a continent to even design or fashion out our own acceptable democratic principles that undoubtedly would inure to the benefit of the entire continent. So people are asking questions, especially those who are Pan-Africanist in nature, whether indeed the Western form of democracy is one that ought to be adopted by African countries, or we have gotten to a stage where we need to fashion out our own model of democracy. Until we are able to find workable answers to these questions of dilemma, I think that the only acceptable norm is the Western democracy that we are practicing. And so we must do everything within our power to ensure that if we are practicing it, then we should practice it in accordance with these laid down tenets and principles. And that is my discomfort when it comes to the Togo example. I do not understand the hypocrisy. Why all of a sudden, because of this unrest, we are beginning to talk about Togo? We've always known that what is being practiced in Togo is not democracy. We've always known. So do we always have to wait, especially as an African Union, for the people themselves to come out before we proceed to run commentary and make calls for changes to the leadership structure? These are the questions we should be asking. Are our organizations designed only to be grappling with the effects of bad decisions, or they are also concerned about preventing its occurrence in the first place? These are questions we should be asking. What are some of the punitive measures the likes of ECOWAS, African Union, have designed to ensure that African countries that are failing to abide by the tenets of democratic governance, which gives power to its people to choose at any point in time a president they want and a parliament they want to lead or complement the efforts of the executive, are guaranteed? How do we ensure that these rights are guaranteed? So you cannot run any meaningful commentary on what is happening in Togo without equally evaluating the relevance of our sectorial organizations like ECOWAS and African Union. Because you cannot have the statute of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, the ECOWAS head of, what's the name, AU head office, without actually abiding by the principles of the man. He was a proactive leader, visionary. And the most popular phrase was that, before you think I thought. That was Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. The fierce urgency of now. He didn't wait for the effects of decisions. He acted. That's why he started championing the cause for African unity. Even at a time that many African leaders did not appreciate the need for African unity. He was always ahead of his peers. So if you have his statue at the AU head office, your actions must depict what he stood for. You must not be reactionary in terms of your activities. So I pity the good people of the Republic of Togo. But in truth, Senior, I can understand your frustration and the silence of and your frustration about the silence of the Western world. But the reality is that what are our own regional blocs doing? As for the West, their interests have never been hidden. When it comes to justifications of interceding or going into other countries, it is either driven by oil or gold, or sometimes even your political image as a republic. They want to take advantage of it. So that has never been lost on anybody. Where their interest is, they come under the pretext of championing the tenets of democracy. When they are done, they leave you in that state. Look at the state of Libya today. They said that the regime was undemocratic and that there was a need for them to install a democratic regime that would respect the rights of the people of Libya. What is the state of Libya today? You go to Iraq, same claim. They were being harassed. Freedoms were far-fetched. And so, as the guardian of the universe, or democratic police chief, they needed to intervene in Iraq to ensure that rights of citizens were protected. Today, what is the state of Iraq? Don't you wake up to children dying as a result of the conflict that has become protracted even for years? And what is the West concerned about? The oil there. Same with Libya. Look at how these countries have been reduced to zero. And I am sure today, if you ask the people, they would have preferred a leadership under Saddam Hussein or Muammar Gaddafi than what they are going through today under the so-called Western reform.
It always gets worse.
Exactly. So that is the reason why Africa must provide that example, using its international, its regional blocks. As for, what's the name for Inyasimbe, I hope I got the name right. I've never been interested in getting their exhibit, but bless. As for him, yes. And that is the more reason why Ghana, I think that His Excellency President Mahama must once again take a lead role in this matter and bring it up at the AU and ECOWAS level. Because you see, when there are issues, they can walk into Ghana easily. Not long ago, we had to clear our streets because of the incident of children being brought in from neighboring countries, begging on the streets of Accra. You can imagine what would happen if this case if this particular incident should degenerate more. The cost implications on Ghana, the social impact on Ghana would be unbearable. So there's the need for even our foreign affairs minister, the Honorable Kujita Ablakwa, to start engaging ECOWAS and that of African Union. They must step in. Many of these things, we shouldn't be seen entertaining it. We shouldn't be seen entertaining it. But I admire the courage of the people of Togo. Because even in the midst of clear unwillingness on the part of Africa to be there for them, they organized themselves, moved onto the streets to register their displeasure. That is heroic in its own measure. And it is something we must commend. So from where I sit, let us see AU announcing sanctions against that regime. If there's a need for us to issue a travel ban, let them issue that travel ban. Let them uphold democratic principles as it should be upheld in the country. Give the people the opportunity to decide whether they want a new president or not. Don't use your own hand-picked parliament to determine your political future. If care is not taken, this gentleman will also tell us that he would hand over to his son. They are trying to build a dynasty in Togo.
He even imprisoned his brother, who was head of his security.
Yes. So these are issues we must not take lightly. Especially Togo, with its proximity to Ghana. If things go south and we are having to deal with rebels, Ghana will not be an exception in terms of the consequences of such an overflow. So this is not a simple matter. The government of Ghana must be interested in this issue, and they must activate internal mechanisms of both ECOWAS and AU to ensure that this matter is brought to an acceptable end. But as for his continued stay as president of the Republic of Togo, it should not be entertained. It shouldn't be negotiable. It shouldn't be part of the discussion. I think that the time has come for that family to make a way, for others to also contribute their quota to the upliftment of the image of Togo.
Right. Thank you very much. I will take time to read a few messages, and then we proceed to our next topic for conversation. Has got to do with the rollout of the 24-hour economy. But Kwablavi of Pokwasi says that after national prayer, those doing Galamsey must not be spared. Chairman Wuntumi Charles Edubuaine Ewuji and others must be dealt with by the law. They have destroyed water bodies, forests, farms, etc. because of their personal interests. Prayers can't stop Galamsey activities unless drastic decisions are taken. All right, thank you very much. I agree with you 100%. Ghana just observed her maiden National Day of Prayer and Thanksgiving Day, bringing all religious denominations together for a common purpose, and that calls for questioning how patriotic we are as a country when Anabisi is vehemently alleging that almost 33 excavators handed to the police from the anti-Galamsey sites have gone wondrously missing few hours after operations. I honestly don't think we are religious as a people, but rather dangerous breeds hiding behind worship. Jomo from Pokwasi Festus. I agree with you 100% on this one. It appears that I'm not the only person who has personal sentiments about the National Day of Prayer. This one here says that we must all come together to support the government in raising the $4 billion needed to implement the 24-hour economy policy. This policy is a game changer that will significantly boost the economy and create sustainable job opportunities for our youth. President Mahama has demonstrated beyond doubt that his priority to improve well-being of the Ghanaian people, not looting state funds under the guise of building a national cathedral. This one here says Togo's issues are plenty. I hope that they come out of it. This one came from Baba Seidu. Thank you, Baba Seidu. Those at the helm of affairs, public servants are still enjoying the benefits the British were enjoying here during pre-independence era. Why must a Ghanaian be paid to take his or her family abroad when on leave or vacation? That was for the white man those days, for them to visit their families. No wonder these public or civil servants still behave like our colonial masters. Have you seen the remuneration, benefits and entitlements of a typical public sector CEO in Ghana? Interesting, right? Thank you very much for your message. I'll read this final one, which is coming from Daniel Akpaliok from Sandema. It says, today, no threat is more devastating, more insidious, and more nationally suicidal than the unchecked scourge of illegal mining. This is not just an environmental issue, it's a threat to national security, food sovereignty, water security, public health, and intergenerational survival. Thanks to His Excellency President Mohammed's government for taking decisive actions to deal with the Galamsey menace in the country, unlike the Eswal Akufo-Addo administration. A very good morning to my godfather and respected politician, Honorable Timothy Awonti Matabwadi. All right, thank you, Daniel, for your message. Let's proceed to our next topic for conversation. Today, government would officially roll out their flagship program, the 24-hour economic policy. The launch is today, Wednesday, the 2nd of July, 2025. Of course, we do know that this was a key campaign promise of the NDC when they were in opposition and were campaigning for the votes of Ghanaians. And so, yep, they've won. We've been waiting with bated breath for the 24-hour economy, and we understand that today it will be rolled out. I'll start the conversation with Hamza. Hamza, it's your party, it's your government in power. What should we expect with the 24-hour economy?
Bless, I think that the expectation is simple. An agenda to operationalize a campaign promise we made during the 2024 general elections. I remember that early this year, upon assumption of office, His Excellency President Mahama did not waste time. He proceeded to set up the task force headed by the most revered Yuzi Kano, with an experience when it comes to trade and international relations. And so what we have to expect going forward is full implementation of the policy that looks at the security implications that are required to drive the policy, the energy requirements, and most importantly, sectorial focus. And if I say sectorial focus, we have to look at areas like operationalization of maybe the downstream petroleum sector for them to be able to do 24 hours, but they would need security. That's why the security requirement is also critical. Then we would also be seeing a situation where companies that are interested in running the 24 hours, private entities, would have the opportunity to go and register and be provided with the necessary security and incentive to be able to run their 24-hour operations. You know that many other state organizations have already started, like the Ghana Publishing Company Limited. They have started their 24-hour economy.
The Passport Office?
DVLA has started. Passport Office has started. What this means is that it's likely to throw out many more jobs into the system. So the focus is also to be able to track at the end of the year the number of jobs that this policy would have thrown out for Ghanaian youth in particular. So that is the focus. We are going to have an institution where individuals can run to. Those companies interested in running a 24-hour economy can go and engage and let government understand their shortfalls and challenges and how government can partner in that regard to be able to make their operations efficient. So I think that as for state institutions that are better positioned to do so, government has already given a directive for them to present their blueprint to the secretariat, the 24-hour secretariat, to have a look at and help them roll it out. I'm told DVLA is doing quite well in that regard already. But now the focus should be on how to replicate it in other regions, because mostly the focus will be in Accra, Greater Accra. But we must find a way of replicating same in, say, the Ashanti region, the Western region, Northern region, Upper East, and Upper West. So it is going to be an interesting policy to monitor. But like we've always indicated as a government, we do not take pride in simply launching policy initiatives. We would begin to know whether our policies seem to be meeting the intended objectives after a year. And if there's the need for us to make some reviews, we will do so. But until that is done, we know that the Ghanaian people still expect a lot from us. And that is why the Secretariat is opened. Right. Even if you also have a novel idea that you feel would be impactful as far as the intended policy is concerned, I'm sure you can walk into the Secretariat and have an engagement with the team for that to be factored into the whole process. But it is going to be an elaborate policy, and it will be monitored efficiently by the team to ensure that there are no excesses when it comes to implementation of the process. Remember,
what is the country's current infrastructural strength to be able to take on a 24-hour economy? A lot of people, or some people, or the opposition, I should say, have been skeptical about how in what form particularly this 24-hour economic policy would be implemented. In what form is it going to be implemented? Now, what is our energy strength? What is our transport strength? How do we gradually integrate that into a 24-hour economy? How is that going to happen?
That has been a major challenge for government, especially when it comes to the energy sector. And that's the more reason why we intend to roll it out in phases, because we know our capacity at this stage. So to do it wholesale without a commensurate investment in our energy capacity, it will be impossible for us to reap the intended benefits of the policy. So that is not lost on government. So you are not going to see a situation where under a year, every sector of our economy begins to run a 24-hour economy. The promise was for 4 years. So we would give approvals as and when our energy capacity can meet the demands of those specific industries. And remember, many of these industries, there are many other organizations that are running that clearly do not need much energy to run, even in the night. Because whichever way you look at it, the operations at night would be far less than the operations during the day. Even those who have had the opportunity of working abroad, you know that 9 shifts, whatever opportunities, whatever requirements you need to be able to perform in the day, most of them are shut down in the night. So you see factories running 50% capacity at night, when during the daytime they run like 100 full capacity. Because you should also have to factor in maintenance requirements. There are some machines you cannot run 24 hours continuously. It will not be in the interest of the organization. So in the night, even in the Western world, some aspects of the machinery are shut down and they run with others. And that is what we are looking at. So what that simply means is that the energy requirements in the night would be much minimal as compared to the daytime. So we are factoring in all that. Again, I mentioned about security. Government would have to find a way, because many of our security agencies are actually not being put to use. Many of them are just languishing in their barracks, yearning for an opportunity to also be meaningful when it comes to our economic drive. Apart from the roads and traffic monitoring that many of our police officers are engaged in, they would love an opportunity to actually feel that they are working. And that is why this policy is important, because if you have petrol stations going to run in the night, they will need security. If you are going to have banks, that's just an example, that plan to run 24 hours, security would need to be enforced. If you have institutions like Tema Oil Refinery and that of Boss planning to run 9 shifts, security would be required because they deal with money, bulk cash. So we would have to tap into all that to be able to make it efficient. The challenges, that is the task of the 24-hour secretariat. As we roll them out, we'll begin to iron out these challenges that we are likely to face. But the most important thing is the opportunities that it will throw out. Because what that means is that if an institution like Post is going to run 24-hour economy, people that are businesses that are strategically placed around that enclave would undoubtedly end up also running a 24-hour economy shift.
That's a spillover effect.
There will be a spillover effect. So even mechanic shops will begin to run a 24-hour economy shift. And in so doing, many people will get opportunity to work. And so that is the focus of government. But the energy bit is very critical.
Very critical. This would be my
very, very critical.
Hamza, we all agree that it can't be implemented wholesale because of the fact that, of course, our infrastructure would not be able to carry the burden immediately of a 24-hour economy. Then it means that we are going to have some sectoral focuses, or we are going to focus on some sectors of the economy. Has that been done already? Do we have a clear roadmap on what sectors of the economy that we are going to focus on as far as the implementation of this?
They will be launching it. I don't want to take the wind out of the sail of the entire policy.
Right.
But I think that all those came up for discussion, and a decision has been taken on it. And I can assure you that when they finally unveil the plan, we would all be back on this table to interrogate it further. But all these discussions played key role in terms of the final policy that has been adopted. And we should not be worried. Bless. We have less than 24 hours. I'm sure that they'll be out.
It will be out. Right. Let me now proceed to Councillor Apia Dankwa, who I know for a fact is big on private sector involvement in terms of our economy. The fact that he believes strongly that the private sector could be that drive, or could be that sector of the economy that would, spur the country on to success. And so let's look at the involvement of the private sector in this 24-hour economy. I think that currently government is also heavily relying on the private sector to, help implement or successfully implement this particular policy. What do they also stand to benefit?
Okay, I think when it comes to the benefit of a 24-hour economy, we can't have a debate about that. When it comes to the benefits of, because when you say you're going to have an economy that is 24 hours, all you are saying is that you're going to have an economy that will produce, that will consume goods and services for 24 hours. You understand? An economy where there will be supply of money for 24 hours. So the benefits are, one, the creation of jobs, the creation of wealth. So I think for the benefits, I think it's clear. Now, the challenge is in how we are going to implement it, because even in the 8 or 12-hour economy that we have not been successful in creating that 12-hour economy. So the 24-hour economy won't be easy. Having said that, I think that this is in no way to criticize what's called the government. I think, if anything, I want to commend that bold initiative. To think that you have a government that can say that, listen, I'm going to lead an effort to create an environment where the economy can run for 24 hours. It's not an easy agenda, but it's better to start, and then as time goes on, we correct. There'll be mistakes along the way, but we learn, we correct. And that's why, even though I'm not an NDC member, and for me, I hope I've been consistent in that view. I think that the job of politicians is to, all of us come together as Ghanaians, whether we agree, because we can't agree on the issue. Even within the political party, you won't have two people agree on every issue. So there'll be bumps along the way. But when you're dealing with something, I think your focus was on the security, the lighting, and all those things. There's a lot of work that government will do in terms of policy, in terms of even the labor laws. There must be a lot of changes institutionally there, in terms of the security, in terms of even building infrastructure to support night public transportation, in terms of lightening of our streets and all. But when you bring the private sector into the equation, then the question is, what kind of policies? And when you say policy here, once you understand that the role government plays in the economies, in terms of the fiscal policy, in terms of the monetary policy, then in which way can government use the power it has in terms of its fiscal policy, its monetary policy, to promote and encourage private sector participation in this 24-hour economy. So essentially, in which way can government use its impact on the economy directly to create a situation where companies can boost their productivity to a situation where they will require 3 shifts? In which way can government use its power of fiscal policy to boost the ability of its citizens to spend? Because if there's one thing COVID taught us, and with the US as an example, it taught us that sometimes consumption, the ability of people to consume, can also stimulate an economy that is dying. So then the point is that beyond infrastructure, beyond the energy issues, beyond the security issues, government must deliberately find a way of using its fiscal policy, its monetary policy, to create an environment where private sector can lead that effort at creating the economy that will run for 24 hours. Over the past 6 months, and I know we've played politics with it, so when the CD became stable, or in fact actually appreciated and then it's not stable, you saw people saying, oh, they did so because government is not spending and government blah 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 blah. The key is that basic economists will tell you that you cannot grow unless your economy is stable, and that the focus of IMF programs is to bring about stability. And then once that stability is brought, then government must then take deliberate steps to then engender growth. So over the past 6 months, what this government has been able to do largely successfully is to bring some stability, into the economy. And we see that stability within the exchange rate, appreciation of the CD, and most importantly, to engender some confidence or to cause a situation where confidence, the dying confidence in the economy has increased. And evidence of that is even in the ratings. That within a very short time, just 6 months, Ghana has managed to get itself from a junk status to, is it B or B minus? B. Even if it was C, even if it was C, that was a quantum leap from junk. So junk means that you are in coma. Junk simply means that you are in coma. Now you are awake. And what determines these ratings is the confidence that the public has in your economy. Now, once that is done, my view is that government must strategically find a way of using its fiscal powers to stimulate the economy. And I've said it here, and I'm going to say it again, that if there's one thing history has taught us, that the SME, the small and medium-scale enterprises, are the key to economic growth. So in terms of policy, so for instance, when you go to a great transformational plan, there's a policy that we recommended there, that listen, government can simply create what we call a government loan guarantee scheme, where either you give some form of guarantees to the banks, or by the stroke of your policy, you can give some incentive-based rewards to the banks so that they give concessionary loans to our small and medium-scale enterprises. But you see, that's even the easy part. But also, the government needs to give support, not just in terms of money, but in terms of the structure. Because if there's one problem that we have dealt with, and I think when you read His Excellency Dr. Bawumia's speech at the what's called UPSA, a recognition that for there to be a transformation of the economy, then we need to find a way of largely transforming the economy from the informal side to a more formalized side. Because there is a situation where 90% of our economy is informal. That simply means that they are not known to the government. But we all know that they are working. So a government can use its power fiscal policy in this agenda at creating that 24-hour economy to simply say that, listen, we are creating a government loan guarantee scheme. We are going to give you support in terms of the structure of your company, in terms of correct corporate governance systems. You understand? But for you to enjoy these policies, then please go and register. Register with the company registry, get a TIN, and all. You understand? So, the 24-hour economy is an excellent idea. An excellent idea that we should not play simple partisan politics with. It's an excellent idea that, because it's the beginning, we'll have a lot of challenges. But Ghanaians should be determined that we are going to make this agenda work, that it is not an agenda that is going to inure to any party's interest per se, but it's an agenda that is going to inure to the state, to the country Ghana. Because if it is successful, it has the potential of creating jobs, it has the potential of creating real prosperity, it has the potential of transforming the entire economy of this country. You understand? So we should critique it, not criticize. Because there's a difference between critiquing something and criticizing something. And because it is a novel thing that we are trying to do in this country, there'll be so many mistakes. But we shouldn't create a situation where, like we always do most of the time, we throw the baby together with the water. So bombs will come, we critique, we correct, we move forward. And when we do that, with everything that they themselves are going to say, they are the experts. We can just make commentary in a very short time. But even that short time, everything we said here, in terms of the need for infrastructure, in terms of the need for sustained energy, in terms of the need for transport, for security, and government itself also through its fiscal and monetary policies, so low interest rates, you understand, reducing the cost of doing business, create a situation where your citizens will have huge expendable income so that they can spend, because all those things boost the economy. You understand? So that together, all of us as Ghanaians, you understand? Because like I said, I know we've created identities, tribal identities, but we also created partisan identities. And sometimes those identities that we created ourselves sometimes overshadows also the national identity that needs to be protected against all these minor identities. I'll call on all of us as Ghanaians. I know they're going to bring the policy. I'm really interested in the policies and how, in which way those policies can impact businesses and private sector and all of us. If there's a time for us to come together as one people, to deliberately take steps to transform this country, our economy, I think the time is now. Let us come together. Let us listen to what they are going to say. Let us take serious interest in what they are going to say. After all, for all we may know, this will be the watershed moment where the political independence we acquired in 1957 can lead to the aim. And the aim was that political independence was going to lead towards an economic independence. So I'll commend His Excellency for this great dream. We may not understand the extent of it, but at least it's better to start something than to sit down and wait to understand everything before you move. We all have to come together and start the process that will transform this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now let me turn my attention now to Dr. Jamal, who is a senior economics lecturer at the Koforidua Technical University, well versed in matters of the economy. Doc, is Ghana ripe for a 24-hour economy? You are an economics lecturer. You know that when it comes to supply and demand, in fact, there has to be a demand for there to be a supply. Is there currently a demand for a 24-hour economy? In the ambit of Ghana's scale of preference, is the best thing that we could choose now a 24-hour economy?
I have the total volume of the work, and I've just shared I think is a 10 pages, some few, the abridged version to you on your phone here. When you read the policy, this should have been coming long ago. I don't know how to even approach it. Ghana, if you look at Ghana, we generally have what we call structural misalignment. All these challenges have been identified. And if you read the document has posited all these challenges that all of us can think about. You pick each table, it tells you that this is a challenge in terms of land tenure system, in terms of structural deficiency in our growth, in terms of imbalances in our import and export sector, in terms of our ability to consume. They line up everything. And the next thing is that, how do we solve this? Some of us have moved beyond challenges to solution. Ghana actually needs not just only 24-hour economy, but the policy in itself inherent in that would blow the minds of everybody. I'm not an implementary agency, but let me give you one thing. I usually talked about sectoral agriculture, planting, consumption. I get in it. I usually talk about it. Sometimes I tell they should group some plants in the north. If you take the policy, it's like what I've been dreaming for so many years. The policy has decoupled from Volta region to the northern region to the Bono. What will be done in each of the sectors, those which is the short and medium term and the long term. Assuming that just the agriculture sector that is done for 24-hour economy, it has, the multiplier effect is so great that I'm even thinking of how Ghana can contain it, because in our containment we may have to build more factories. So it's going to be a game changer as far as this country is concerned. As my brother, my two colleagues have spoken about, sometimes you may not rationalize policy beyond those who know the vision in that policy. But as I'm saying, those of us into policy in the policy space, very soon we would sieve it into a smaller bit and look at how these implementation challenges will come and how we can advise government. But I am telling you that the 24-hour economy is one of the most serious policy. And I was thinking that government could even commit more money than necessary. For example, they are earmarking 2.3 million hectares of land for agriculture activities. And there is that kind of synergies and interconnectivity of the supply value chain. And so if someone goes somewhere in the Volta region, they said to be the breadbasket of Ghana in the production sector. Then you come to some part of the same Volta region, they will have those who are going to grow rice. You go to Nasia rice in the northern part of the country. It's so beautiful. So then connectivity itself will create artificial jobs, in the sense that you will have people who will have to do other businesses apart from just what is deployed by the state, which is very beautiful. Another part of it, I'm just looking at the supply side from the government. Another part of it is that most often than not, we are talking about security. Even though it is done within the 24-hour economy, pursuant to what they are coming to, there may be some shift in the activities so that they won't demand too much of a security concern as we have been thinking about, or we are magnifying our brains. Another good part of it is that the demand side, supply creates its own demand. Once we know that there are no rigidities and then there is flexibility on all these things, supply creates its own demand. And so once the government is providing this enabler, then it is going to create jobs in the side of private sector coming in as private sector players. We will have individuals who will find jobs within the value chain that can ultimately create jobs. And so 24-hour economy is just a cut. But when you go in there, it has so many other dimensions that can provide a leverage for the growth of the country. And so for me, I think that today is a day that we expect government to outdoor this. But I would think that government should rather look at those sectors that money can go in now and then do that, especially in terms of imports. It is going to cut down imports by 60%. And once it cuts down import by 50% and agriculture production should increase, it will slow down our inflation. And once there is less inflationary pressure on us as a country, our living standards will go up. And at the same time, it will enhance our health conditions. So it's a multifaceted kind of program, and I think that Ghana needs it. It should have come longer than as we are seeing it today. What I also will urge is that communities, regions must be ready to embrace that. They must be ready to embrace this in the sense that development is not just something that happens in a day. Development is something that moves in bits. And once any government begins to do that, and government is proud to provide such an opportunity, I think that is going to be the best for the country. In addition to that, if you look at the role that will be played by all actors within the space of the 24-hour economy, we have even seen, you will see private sector as an engine that will have to drive some of this. We see development that will go into these communities because in the document, government plan to build, for example, something like a little inland port. For example, one area where they will have holding for whatever that will produce in that locality. That will create job by itself. When they are going to start to build that, that alone will create job for people.
Right.
And so the hit on the economy will reduce in a bit. And at the same time, we are likely to see people who hitherto wouldn't want to join the product to go on board. Because as I was talking when my brother was saying, there is always a spillover effect in whatever that you do. And those who free ride will reduce, because if there is a spillover effect and you are likely to get money out of that, what will you do? You join.
You join, yeah.
And when it comes to the cities, you see, the cities will most of the time talk about infrastructure. This normal infrastructure development is going to go on. But you cannot wait till it is done before the actual program starts. And so what government can do is that government will first of all look at those areas that are very critical to drive this particular program. And I think that would be beautiful for us. And for 24 hours, it's just a catchy phrase that I keep saying. But inherent in the policy is a big push thinking. If you look at Rosto's studies of economic growth, if you realize that countries were taught to be doing this little, and they get to the high mass consumption stage. And Ghana, over the period, I kept asking questions: is Ghana take off, or they are yet to take off? Those are the conversations, and this is now for us as a country to take off. Because once we have this production process starting, we have, and the agriculture sector is going to change the narratives, because Ghana as a country, our major challenge is agriculture, where we tout about 70% of us involved in agriculture, yet we consume almost 80 or 90% of all what we have as import. And so in the layers of the program, I think the government should first look at those aspects of agriculture that will provide an enabler for us to be able to reduce import. And once we reduce import, it facilitates and helps our balance of payment. And it also reduces pressure on the cedi in terms of comparable terms with the dollar. And so those aspects government will do, should be able to do that. And there should also be monitoring and evaluation. Even though there is a secretariat, there should be a lifetime data that could be used as part of data science to make prudent decisions. Because what I've realized is that over the period, people see government activities as it is not my private, it's not my own thing, and so it is for government. But I think that the dictums of monitoring and evaluation should now change, in the sense that Guzitano should not just sit in his office. They should have a way they will deploy people and get lifetime data. And so that where there are bottlenecks, because if there are one part of the program that has absolute bottlenecks, it has a tendency to travel to the other part of the program. And so if we face certain bottlenecks quickly, we should deal with it. Yeah. And once government deals with that, it will come to a point that it becomes part and parcel of our daily lives. That even when I wake up in the morning, I usually don't sleep early. I wake up at 2 a.m. and I want to go to town to do certain things. There should be that assurance I'll get there.
Thank you very much. Let me do some messages. Then I'm sure we'd have a little bit of time to discuss the third story, which unfortunately would be our final topic for conversation. This one here says, good morning, bless you. I lost, but now you're found. Nice to see you again. Ken Williams, thank you so much. Good to have you as well. This one here says, good morning, bless. The political tension and turmoil in Togo is very frightening, and if care is not taken, it will escalate into civil war. These things are happening in Togo, and ECOWAS and African Union are not saying anything about it. France's shadow in Africa for over 57 years. One family can't and must not continue to enjoy it all. Thousands of brave Togolese youth have taken to the streets in a massive uprising against the ruling Nasingbe dynasty, which has held power for over 57 years from father to son. The regime, backed by France, has been accused of corruption, suppression of democracy, economic hardship, and human rights violation. The people are saying enough to tyrannical rule. They are actually demanding for free, fair, and transparent election, constitutional reforms, and an end to foreign interference, true democracy and accountability. Thank you so much, Ghana. And for that matter, the nice party, I'm so proud of him as a young man with such good ideas. I salute him, and I will urge him to keep the good works. But my brother, I'm equally worried about what is happening in our water bodies and forest reserves. Something must be done, and done quickly, to save our forests and water bodies. Can you imagine 40 excavators seized and kept under the care of the police? 33 is gone, according to Madame Hannah Bisu. This is totally unacceptable. The police must be held responsible. Madame Hannah Bisu, I greet you wherever you are this morning. Hamza, I mean, this Galamsey fight, and I know this would be a little deviation from this conversation we are having, but it appears to me, and this is a personal sentiment, this is a personal opinion, it appears to me that we do not have a properly coordinated front to fight this many. So today is this institution leading the fight, then tomorrow another institution says that, okay, I'm going to seize excavators. Who is primarily responsible for the fight against illegal mining? What organization, what entity, what state institution should be fighting Galamsey? Is it the Ministry for Lands and Natural Resources? Is it the Ghana Police Service? Is it the Ghana Armed Forces? Is it Hanabisius organization? What are we doing?
You see, many have told me that the most difficult thing to do is to communicate on behalf of a ruling government. And sometimes it is okay to say that sometimes I can actually appreciate that. But the reality is, when it comes to the issue of Galamsey, it is collaborative in nature. And because it is collaborative in nature, you need many other institutions of state to be able to effectively fight the menace of Galamsey. I say so because you are having to deal with the district security councils, you are having to deal with the regional security councils, that is RESEC, and it is the job of the minister responsible for lands and natural resources to be able to effectively handle or coordinate all these sector agencies. But you know that DISEC and RESEC all fall under the ministry responsible for local government. So you cannot effectively fight Galamsey, even as a ministry responsible for lands and natural resources, without collaborating with these sector agencies. That sometimes falls under even different ministries, because DISEC, the district assemblies, it falls strictly under local government and what do you call it? Yeah, I think local government. So these are the issues we need to appreciate. Having said that, I am equally alarmed about the needless allocation of responsibility by some state actors in the fight against Galamsey. They are not helping the fight. They are rather, by these actions, making it difficult for government to effectively handle the menace. If you have any information about Galamsey and you are a state agency, nothing bars you from communicating directly to the minister responsible for lands and natural resources. Especially if it does not fall under your core mandate. But that kind of attitude of all of us trying to demonstrate commitment to the fight, we may think that we are helping government, but we are throwing so much confusion into the air. And that is why I started on the premise that sometimes the most difficult thing to do is to communicate on behalf of government, because there are times you have to take on your colleagues for how their actions could be injurious to government policy. And that is the reason why you have asked me this question.
Yes.
Because the ministry responsible for the fight against Galamsey and to coordinate all other agencies is the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. And so there are those who should be speaking on matters of Galamsey, not any chief executive of a state agency. And if excavators are seized, it is the responsibility of the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources to let the media know that this number of excavators have been seized. Because not long ago, the ministry itself indicated that they had gotten to a stage where they were now trying to identify or if you like, give identification numbers to task force members mandated with the responsibility of fighting the menace. Because they appreciate that there are many rogue elements who, under the guise of fighting Galamsey, do all kinds of things to even legitimate mining concessions. They harass some of them. So the ministry is working assiduously to regularize the sector. The least we can do as government functionaries and activists of this government is to give the ministry the needed support to work and not make their work difficult for them. And so for me, bless, let us not mince words. It is not the responsibility of the Minerals Development Fund. It is not the responsibility of our sister, the National Women's Organizer of the National Democratic Congress, Anna Bisu. I think that it is not her responsibility. If she has concerns, if she has discovered any vital information, the most responsible thing to do is to channel it through the minister responsible for lands and natural resources and let them act on it. Because if we open the floodgates where everybody at all can decide to arrest people they suspect to be engaged in Galamsey, it will become difficult for government to have an effective handle on the fight against Galamsey. And so our actions must not stampede government efforts in that regard. So, as a matter of principle, anything related to Galamsey, I'm interested in what the minister responsible for lands and natural resources tells me, would say. Because that is his core mandate. He coordinates everyone under his outfit. So if you are a chief executive under the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, and you go on your tours and you discover issues of Galamsey, because that is not your mandate, because you are not the chief executive of the Minerals Commission, you don't issue the licenses. You may not appreciate the legal implications of the concessions or licenses that they are holding. So communicate, call your sector minister and give them the responsibility to go ahead to deal with the situation. Like I said, bless, we may love each other as colleagues in this party, but when it comes to our commitment to ensuring that this government succeeds, and most importantly, His Excellency President Mahama becomes a success story as far as the Fourth Republican democracy is concerned, that friendship has limits. If your actions will likely subject the presidency to ridicule in terms of his policy direction, we will call you out with the greatest of respect.
Right, thank you very much. I needed to ask that question, though it doesn't form part of today's conversation. But all three of my panelists here have some knowledge about law. I know Dr. Jamal is currently doing his LLM. Doc? No. LLB. LLB. Okay, right.
I'm now trying to be like this.
All right. And of course, Councillor Apia Dankwa is himself a lawyer, as well as Hamza Suini, both of whom are members of the Ghana Bar Association. Your president has spoken relative to that conversation, that raging conversation, never-ending conversation about the Chief Justice.
Let's have people listen.
He said that it sets a troubling precedent, this whole, removal process. Briefly, Council, your thoughts on this?
Okay, so before I even come on this issue, I just want to say that I know the politics and all, but I think all citizens of Ghana must have the right to arrest when they say a crime.
You even need to comment on it.
Being committed, so you argue that anyway. So, you see, the Ghana Bar Association, I think, have felt that they need to talk on this CJ issue. I think the starting point for this discussion should be to reiterate the view that we've all been taxed under the 1992 Constitution to defend and protect the Constitution of Ghana. In light of that principle, that Bible principle of liberty and accountability, you can see articles of our Constitution that enforces the desire of the people of Ghana as expressed in the 1992 Constitution to hold people with granted political leadership accountable. So you look at, I think, Article 63, there's an accountability clause against the executive. You look at Article 119, I think, against the judiciary, and then, sorry, against the parliament, and 146 on the judiciary. And so when the Ghana Bar Association takes the view, or the president of the Ghana Bar Association takes the view that an attempt to hold the Chief Justice accountable constitutes a bad precedent, then is she telling us that we should breach the terms or the principle that underpins the Constitution of Ghana? Because everybody is accountable. I think I'm fortified in my belief. I think I've said a number of times that for us to sustain this democracy, then it is necessary that we build the right political culture that would tolerate diverse views, opinions, but will also hold political leadership accountable. And so for me, the petition made against the CJ, understand, enforces the firm belief of the people of Ghana in this principle of probity and accountability that underpins our Constitution. I think that's how we should see it. But to attempt to spin a narrative that suggests that it amounts to a witch hunt, to attempt to turn this thing into a political, a partisan battle between the MPP and NDC, is to undermine the purpose of the Constitution itself. And so I think the president of the GBA should stay focused and stay true to the terms of the first statement she made, which was to the effect that this attempt to hold the CJ accountable should be done under the ambit of a respect for the rule of law. And then they should have left it at that. You understand? So yeah, so what she said is her opinion. I don't think it reflects the view of the Ghana Bar Association. I don't think so. It doesn't reflect the view of the Ghana Bar Association, because to say that, to hold a view that suggests that an attempt to hold the Chief Justice accountable is a bad precedent, is to say that an attempt to hold the principles of probity and accountability, which is one of the abiding principles that underpins our Constitution, is a bad precedent. That cannot be a bad precedent. If anything, it should be encouraged, people should be encouraged to have the courage to hold people they give their powers to accountable, because our Constitution says that justice emanates from the people. That's what the Constitution says. So where the Chief Justice is using powers that we give her, the Chief Justice is using or is attempting to give justice that emanates from us. And so if we think that, if any Ghanaian thinks that the CJ has acted in a manner that would require that her position be looked at, and if possibly she be removed, we cannot justify an argument that says that that position is a bad president. If anything, what is happening is a good president. And more people should be encouraged to have the courage. Well, it's not easy to hold, to petition that the CJ be removed. Now, more people be encouraged to have the presence of mind and the courage of conviction, where they believe that people have acted in a manner adverse to the purpose, adverse to the terms of their positions. Then they should petition that those people, those public officers, be removed. That's what I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Why we look at it from that perspective? If fundamentally we said, let's respect the Constitution, why would some tenets of the Constitution be advocated by people that it should be applied, and we are all fighting and running here and there. But unfortunately, because over the period we've made many public issues in Ghana political, I'm sure that is why this one has turned that way. But I was expecting that the Ghana Bar Association don't allow themselves to be dragged into this. You could make a point. And I remember the first time this matter came, I talk about the fact that if it is about unionism, that you are a union, then our member has been, whether just or unjust, you still have to talk about it. But do that as a union. It's going to represent, and that has been done. She came to the media, raised many issues. People are watching, the public opinion is also there. But for a union like Ghana Bar, it's losing its credibility for me, I think. Because they begin to look at, they know the other people who are right-thinking Ghanaians who have their viewpoint about them. And then when you want to express an opinion, the opinion should be expressed with sincerity, that people will know that whatever you are talking about is in the interest of everybody. Why must it be selective? And I keep asking this question. Loretta Lamte was an example. They never talked about that. And even over the weekend, I listened to some women group who were talking. I think one of them made a very succinct point. She said that let's not look at it as a woman. Let's look at it as a country. What kind of country do we want to build? Should it be a country of laws? Look, we have been crying for a very long time. Even our state institutions, laws are tilted to favor one or two. At the public viewpoint, we see laws, as sometimes always alluded to in our court system, being tilted. Sometimes when you read the judgment of a court, you see all the principles that were taught in the law. And then when you see the judge say, now what happened? Sometimes there are some lawyers, some judges, I don't even want to talk about them. When you read their judgment, so these are the principles, A, B, C, D, do this. This is even it is not even a dissenting view. And so all of these are problems because people who read the law, this is not what we're taught to do. And so if somebody is being asked that, let's follow the Constitution, let's deal with this, someone has a petition. Why don't you want to allow the Constitution to work? Right. And so GBA, for me, they must be measured in the way they approach some of these public matters. Look, most of their former members, forgive me, Council, most of your people have become very political. You can talk about Frank Davies, those guys. Look, you can see. So when somebody has a political ambition, he jump into the leadership of the GBA. Because those days it was very powerful. When the GBA speaks, Ghana gets cold. Today when they speak, even in the media, very few people report it. So I think that they have to begin to look at how they elect their leadership. Because it's very, very important. Because having a sacred job like being a lawyer, you get into the fraternity. And you expect that whenever you are going to be talking or speaking in public, what they talk about is how we can be guardians of the law and how this law could apply. Because in a society where laws don't actually matter, then such societies will extinct. Violence will be a place for everybody. Because you want to go to court, you know that if I go to court, I'm going to get the justice that I'm requiring. Then people who think they should know better are rather not looking at it that way. So for me, the members of GBA should begin to think, and they should also see how they elect their leaders. So that at the end of the day, when they are going to talk and also serve as moderation how our legal things are done in Ghana, we will take them seriously.
All right, thank you very much. Finally, Hamza.
I think that I've run enough commentary on this organization, and my senior has done an excellent job this morning. I don't need to waste my time on the subject before us, except to say that whatever we do, principles must remain principles. And you gave an interesting quote over the weekend when we met at on another platform about how in this country we are always quick to change our principles with time. And that appears to be what the GBA is engaged in. Unfortunately, we are dealing with an organization that first of all said that, look, everybody should refrain from commenting on the matter because it is sub judice. In less than 48 hours, that same organization purported to pass a resolution declaring the president's intervention or actions as being unconstitutional. and calling for a reversal of the suspension of the Chief Justice, and threatened a court action in case the president failed to listen to their call. It's been more than a month or two. That organization is yet to carry through its threats because the president has not. That was what she said. Differing opinions, she branded them as noise. Said that you can make all the noise you want. The law is the law. So the same advice goes to the GBA. They must be bold enough to go and test this in the law courts, because they say that the president doesn't have the powers to suspend. They must go and test it like they threatened. I'm interested. Because we are dealing with His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama, a meticulous leader who is not driven by emotions and feelings of vendetta. He is guided as president by the laws of this country. And he's demonstrated that on many occasions. This same GBA attempted to question his appointment procedures of Supreme Court judges during his first term. Remember? This same GBA versus Attorney General. They were embarrassed by our Superior Court, the Supreme Court. Because the Supreme Court reasoned with the decision of His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama and said that it was in tandem with the law. This same GBA proceeded to institute what it called the Senior Advocates of Ghana award system illegally. The same people that are now accusing His Excellency President Mahama of engaging in an illegality, they became a citadel of illegality when they introduced that Senior Advocates Governance of Ghana scheme without due process.